Hey guys, what's up? Keysby here. So, today we are going to be looking at some gameplay footage of Floowandereeze, and this will kind of act as a little bit of a test hand video, a little bit of a gameplay tutorial. We're going to be showing one full match and just one of that I thought was fun to illustrate a Floowandereeze mirror match. So I just want to apologize in advance. I'm probably going to mix up some of the card names here and there because Edo Pro has them half listed with OCG and half listed with TCG names, so that is probably going to happen throughout this video. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. So our first matchup is going to be against Virtual World. So we're looking at game one right now, and our hand is Dimension Shifter, Advent, Rabina, Duality, and Unexplored Winds. So really, really good hand. D-Shifter especially good against Virtual World. Our opponent is looking at Triple Tack, Chalice, Lao Lao, Nyan Nyan, and Foolish Burial Goods. I don't know a ton about Virtual World, but I know that they do have enough to combo off here, if not for the D-Shifter. So something that you're going to see in this matchup is that we're actually going to wait until the main phase to fire off the Dimension Shifter, which unfortunately is going to play into Triple Tack. We wait till the main phase so that we can get the most bang for our buck out of Dimension Shifter. So for example, they're not going to open with the Foolish Burial Goods. This is where we're actually going to fire off the D-Shifter so that they burn through there once per turn on the Lao Lao. But we are going in blind. We don't know they're playing Virtual World, so there's a possibility that D-Shifter might not do anything in this matchup. There's a possibility that our opponent might plus off of D-Shifter if we're in a mirror match. So it's just best to wait game one if you're going in completely blind to fire off the D-Shifter in response to something else. Like, again, for example, if they had fired off Foolish Burial Goods first, we would have had a huge plus off the D-Shifter because they would have been forced to banish something out of their deck, and they would have burned the Foolish Burial Goods. So, unfortunately, we're turning on Triple Tack, but I think it'll be okay. So, they're firing off the Triple Tack here. Just comment below what you think the best target for them is going to be. Give you a few seconds to do that. And so they took out the Rabina, which I think objectively was the best move for them. So we're now looking at Duality, Unexplored Winds, and Advent, which isn't great. We don't have anything to start our combo, and our opponent does have full hand knowledge, so let's see what happens. Okay, so we have Ryza, which now turns on Advent of Adventure, but we don't want to open with that because we don't know if our opponent has an Ash Blossom, and because our opponent has full hand knowledge, if they see that we fire off Advent, banishing Ryza to try to grab a starter, and they do have the Ash, they're immediately going to drop it there. Because better to let the Duality resolve on a maybe than me get a guaranteed starter. Or alternatively, they could just Ash whatever the starter is as well. So it's really just, there's no world where the best move is firing off the Advent first. And we also know, well, we don't know, they know that they have a Chalice. So what we're going to do is fire off the Duality first. So we grabbed the Prosperity over the Toucan because Toucan isn't the best starter. We could start our combo with Advent, but again, if they have Ash and they hit the Advent, then that's kind of our turn. We could, in theory, if they do that, use Unexplored Winds to shuffle back the Ryza to try to draw a starter, but it's not ideal. We're playing with a lot of luck there, so we want to kind of continue to try to bait out the Ash if it is there with the Prosperity. So, of course, we go for 6, and we find a Rabina. Perfect. So we're going to grab that. So now at this point, our opponents let us see 9 cards out of the deck. I'm pretty certain that they don't have Ash. I know that they know we have Advent, but they've let us do a lot. So, safe to say Ash is not going to be a problem. So all we really have to worry about right now is Imperm and the Chalice. But we're just gonna bop out Rabina. So something cool here, In the combo video, I pointed out if you start your combo with Rabina and Advent, you have to search for a Stree so that you have an additional tribute material for the eventual end pen. Because we have unexplored winds here, we actually don't have to do that, and we can search at Barrier Statue because Yan Yan is going to act as our second tribute material for end pen. So, just standard Wander stuff. Again, there's obviously no Ash at this point, but there's no reason to not set up the chain in the correct order. It's good practice to be in. Grab our end pen. Set up that lock. And now we have Dreaming Town access as well. So Burial Goods, they're gonna go for their combo. We're not really concerned about this at this point. They do send Farfa so that they can banish our Barrier Statue, so that they can kind of try to start their combo. So on normal summon, we're just gonna fire that off, get the Eaglin, and they are gonna surrender here, but just as an example of what we would have done. Eaglin, we would have searched for Apex Avion, tributed both of these, ended on Apex Avion to their one card in hand. They have nothing going on in the graveyard that's at all relevant at this point, and we have beyond full combo left over in our own hand. So that was game one. Let's take a look at game two. So we're going into game two with a significantly worse hand than what we had in game one. We've got DD Crow, evenly matched, map, advent, and terraforming. Evenly matched is going to be good, but it really depends on them not putting up any spell trap negates, because we don't really have a ton of good bait for that. And we've got our opponent having Lao Lao, E-Telly, GG, Lili, and King Long. So they're looking like they're in a pretty good spot. I'm just going to let their turn play out. I am going to point out that there are going to be several times where DD Crow would have been a nice play, but I opt to hold the DD Crow just in case I don't draw anything off the top, so that I can at least try to advent away the DD Crow and grab a starter. And we do have maps, so we have a little bit of Ash Blossom and Imperm protection in that. The Imperm protection being, whatever our second normal summon is, possibly can go through if they Imperm the first one. But at this point, it's just kind of hope and a prayer kind of vibes. Unfortunately, as good as this deck is, sometimes it does brick. So this is the moment where I kind of remember thinking about maybe DD Crowing the Malicious, because there is a very specific card that VW plays that I am concerned about. And here it is, Geomathmech Final Sigma. So if you don't know, when it's in the extra monster zone, it's unaffected by other cards, which means we really don't have any means of getting over it outside of our extra deck. So you're actually going to see me dip into the extra deck in this game. So their combo's still going. Fortunately, they don't end on any real spell trap negates, so we are going to get to evenly. And we're going to pull another evenly off the top, just in case. So they're just going to set themselves up a bit for next turn. And of course, they're going to keep Final Sigma. So we at least know that the last card in hand is a virtual world. It's not a hand trap or anything, so we can kind of safely combo off. So we're going to just do a very basic combo here. We are setting up to try to do something on our next turn to deal with the Final Sigma, because we're not going to be able to deal with it this turn. We are just a little bit hoping that they whiff on their next draw as well. It doesn't sound good, but, just being honest about it, it's kind of where we're at with this hand and this game state. So fortunately they did whiff. It also looks like that they forgot that they had a second King Long in the graveyard. So just in the interest of taking care of that, I do banish it with the Shuri. So I am going to misplay slightly in what I do. It ultimately works out, but I'll point out what the better play would have been. So if you'll notice, I did special summon. I didn't activate anyone's effects on the normal summon of the Eaglin because it would have locked out being able to do this. What I should have done here instead of making Closed World Goddess was held the Eaglin in my hand. And then I could have gone Assembled Nightingale, poked him directly, Downward Magician into a Zeus. Zeus being in defense mode, so it would have allowed me to clear the field on my opponent's turn of any follow-up. Final Sigma would not have been able to get over the Zeus, and then on the following turn, I had Eaglin and another map in hand. I could have done full combo, and then rammed the Zeus into the Final Sigma, and taken care of it that way. It ultimately works out, but that would have been the better move here. I just feel like I should point that out as we go. So, and this is where it bites me in the ass that I did not make the correct move, because that would have been a nice Zeus right there. Fortunately, their follow-up isn't that great. Luckily, we have the map. So at this point, we need one of these off the field. So we are just straight up going to use Evenly Matched as a 1-for-1 exchange. Which is fine, sometimes you'll do it. And now we can combo off. They do have a Droll in hand, but we actually are going to end up playing around it. As the game kind of gets later, hand traps like Lancia and Droll become less effective against this deck because you can cycle through your graveyard and Banished very, very easily, which is what we ended up doing there. So we're not going to get a M-Pen Search, but that's fine at this point. So, something to point out here. It might look weird that we fired off Dreaming Town's Book of Moon effect on our own turn when our opponent can just flip this back face up. But what we're trying to avoid is on our opponent's turn, them switching this to defense mode and sniping out the M-Pen, because we need one of these two to really survive to get us through. So what will happen now is on their turn, when they flip this face up, it's locked into attack mode again, and it can't use its effect to pop anything on our field. So of course they're going to do that, but at this point, you know, they only have the 2 cards in hand. Even searching off the King Long, they have to discard something, and if they commit a normal summon, we are just going to start a Rise of Loop and win that way. And at this point, we're not going to fire off the Prosperity because we know we already have it, and they're going to see the writing on the wall and quit out. So that, aside from the one misplay, was a pretty good showing of just what this deck can do. Even going through an established board. Again, Evenly super helps, but just showing, you know, overall gameplay is the goal here. So now we're going to show what is quickly becoming my least favorite matchup, the Floowandereeze Mirror Match. This is a round 3. I don't remember who won game 1 and game 2. I think I won game 1, they won game 2 because I'm going first this round. Our opponent has opened Duality, Lancia, Advent, Rabina, and Stormwind, which I'm not sure why was left in the deck. I sided mine out pretty early. Then we are opening Stree, Duality, Prosperity, Advent, and Rabina. So I'm going to point out that, first of all, Lancia isn't as effective against this deck as people think it is. It's good if you're already going against a hand that, like an Ash or an Imperm would have stopped anyway. Droll, I think, early game is much better. But Advent actually gives it some play around because you can chain the Advent to get something banished and get a new search and get your chain blocked that way. The other thing to point out is at this point, our opponent knows the matchup and they know that we're on things like Prosperity and Extrav. So really firing this off in the draw phase would have been ideal so that I can't even pay the cost to activate this, because as you'll see, the first thing I'm going to do is fire this off. I do misclick here. That should have been 6. There's really never a reason, unless you only have 3 cards left in your extra deck, to ever do 3 with this deck. So as you can see, in response, we're going to banish that before this resolves. We didn't search for the field spell because it's not really that useful at this point. I'd rather have more birds. And again, we are not going to search for the field spell because I would rather have Dreaming Town because it's chainable, just in case our opponent opens Feather Duster or something like that. And I do want to be able to, depending on how they play their turn, potentially flip everything face down after going into an Apex Avian, which is what is going to ultimately happen. M-Pen in the mirror match is kind of, it's just a searcher. Since nothing is special summoned, the lockout effect doesn't really do anything. Having the attack is fine too, but M-Pen into an M-Pen, it's not as useful in this matchup, unfortunately. But we need it for the search. So as you can see, we fired off our Dreaming Town already. So they're playing the Simorgh variant. I'm not a huge fan of it. I understand why it's played, and I think it's perfectly valid to play it. I just prefer to stick with the Floowandereeze core and jam as much consistency in it as possible with pot cards and Gold Sark and all that noise. So they're going to fire off Ryza here. And this is where we get rewarded for searching Dreaming Town instead of the field spell. This was a mistake, by the way. I 100% meant to banish my own Advent to make it more accessible via Toucan. Instead, I accidentally clicked the one in the wrong graveyard. I just want to point that out. So that was kind of doing them a favor, unfortunately. So we can almost be totally sure that this is Dreaming Town. We know this is Ryza. We saw this search, but at this point, Lancia, as you're going to see, while we have so much bird in hand already, is going to be kind of useless. We sided in Dankaseka because it's funny. So we don't want them doing anything on our turn. We're going to grab the Ash because we know what we're up against. Going to grab our Dreaming Town back. So, I kind of misspoke. M-Pen's not dead in this matchup. What I really meant to say was M-Pen is just purely a search power in this matchup. Again, the attack halving effect is cool if you want to get over your opponent's Ryza, but Apex Avian can potentially negate it, and if you attack into another M-Pen, they're just going to crash into each other. Which is why we tributed it off, because the Apex Avian is more useful in this matchup. And we have Dreaming Town as well, so we can easily recover our M-Pen with Sri and Toucan. So we are actually going to negate this just because we want to keep them off 2 bodies so that we can fire off our Dreaming Town and make sure that they don't get into an M-Pen or their own Apex Avian. And we also know that we have the Ash for if they normal summon anything else, like a Rabina or something, which they ultimately will. And this is pretty much the end of the game. Yeah. So just to explain what would have happened there, we would have banished something from our graveyard, probably Toucan, gone Apex Avian, tributed both of them, gotten the Toucan back, and then from there just been in total control of the game. Probably set up a Dankaseka as well, just because we no longer need our Dreaming Town, and we can keep them off monsters with Apex Avian. Alrighty, so that has been some Floowandereeze gameplay. I hope everyone enjoyed, and hopefully you guys learned something from it as well. Sorry it got a little bit long, but I feel like it's important that we really go in depth and explain, why we're doing what we're doing, why we make certain plays, why certain things work, all that noise. So if you enjoyed this, don't forget to leave a comment, like, and subscribe so that you can see more gameplay videos of this deck in the future. Anyway, I'll catch you later. Bye.